Okay. I think it really stems from vet schools.
Hmm.
But when I started vet school in the UK, I would have been, sort of 18, 19 years old. Um, we get what's called a student loan from the government, and then you pay it back later when you graduate and you get a job.
Okay.
Um, so during your time at vet school, your tuition fees are paid for by this loan, but also you get what's called like a maintenance loan.
Okay. Um, with respect to protecting our income, what is income protection and how does it work?
So I have income protection with PG Mutual. So I went with PG Mutual. I pay about £8 a month, and that essentially ensures me that if I break my back and I'm in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, I can't be
Yeah.
a vet anymore, but I will get the same salary as if I was a vet paid out to me monthly.
Wow. Welcome to the King Obed Podcast, your premium destination to personal growth, development, and inspiration. In today's episode, we want to look into the subject of personal finance and financial education. With me is a guest who is a vet surgeon in the UK, and she has practical experience in the issue of personal finance. And she is Jordon Egan. Jordan, welcome to the King Obed podcast.
Hello, it's so good to see you again. How are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Nice to
Good.
meet you again.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Yes. So money is everything we are all looking for in this world. We get up every time we move out to go to work, all because of money. And can you tell us how you got into this journey of trying to streamline your personal finances and
Oh,
the
yes.
benefits that you've had up to this point?
Okay. I think it really stems from vet school. So in the UK, I must admit, I'm not a professional here, guys, so don't take my word as gospel. And
Yes.
I've got a very UK centric view.
Mhm.
But when I started vet school in the UK, I would have been, sort of 18, 19 years old. Um, we get what's called a student loan from the government, and then you pay it back later when you graduate and you get a job.
Okay.
Um, so during your time at vet school, your tuition fees are paid for by this loan, but also you get what's called like a maintenance loan
Okay.
and a maintenance grant. So I used to have like a chunk of money from the government, student finance, and that used to be what I used to live off of. And I would then have to sort of supplement my income by getting part-time jobs and just trying to be as smart as possible with money. I was the first person in my family to go to university, and
Oh,
the cost of
nice.
rent in London, yeah, thank you. Um,
Eh,
my parents are really chuffed. But London was super expensive. Like, I couldn't have picked a more expensive city to go to
yeah.
vet school, and it was the only vet school that gave me an offer. So it's a very competitive course. It was the only option I had on the table at the time, and I took it. So living in London, where it's very, very expensive, is what made me sort of try to get to grips with money a bit better and try and figure out, how can I save money? How can I maximize money? How can I budget? And what should I be considering, and how should I be doing it?
Wow. So you moved from wherever you find yourself and then to London
Mhm.
where you were schooling. And because of
Yes.
the situation at that point in time, it made you streamline your finances, and up to this time, it is helping you to dominate your life as a veterinary surgeon as well. What does personal finance mean to you, and why is it so important that like professionals like yourself is so in tune with it?
Very good question. I probably don't have a very exciting answer. So basically, I think personal finance, what it means to me is I strive to be comfortable. Like, it, some people want to be rich and famous, and
Yeah.
I'm not striving for that at all. I'm
Okay.
striving to live comfortably, hopefully retire young, and just enjoy life in its many forms. So that is my goal with personal finance and with money, and I'm quite realistic. I think that's what helps. And I know that, you know, being a vet doesn't make you rich. So, you know, I'm not going to get rich and famous with my day job. And that's basically it, really. Finance, I just strive for comfortability, and to be able to live in as less, you know, with as minimal stress as possible. And I think the most important thing is that I try and keep my financial prospects as flexible as possible, and like try and exercise money in a flexible way. But we'll talk about that later.
Okay. So when you were in school, what were some of the financial benefits aside the government giving you loans for you to take care of your school fees and other stuff? What are some of the financial benefits? If, for instance, you are a student in the UK, what are some of the financial benefits you can have access to?
Sure. No, that's a good question. There's a few things that were beneficial. So as a student in the UK, you're exempt from council tax. So you don't have to pay council tax at all. So that's really good. So I'm paying quite a big council tax bill at the moment, especially because I've moved into a new build house and it took a while to get it valued. So I'm in arrears. So I owe extra money on top of my normal council tax. So, you know, that's something that you don't have to consider. When you live in sort of student dormitories as well, like university partnered sort of accommodation, you don't have to think about all the bills. So you just kind of pay one lump sum. It covers all your gas, electric, water bills. You know, you don't have to think of all these separate things. So it's easier to manage. And when you come out of that, you then have to, you know, face the reality of is paying for Wi-Fi, paying for water, all these separate bills that all clock up and are easily forgettable. I was the one that had to chase up my council tax bill because I forgot about it. So, you know, it's one of those things that as a student, council tax is exempt, which is great. You also are entitled to student discount. And you're also entitled to a student bank account. Now, the bank account is really key here because that gives you a hell of a lot more flexibility. So you and I, at the moment, being working professionals, just have a normal current account and then maybe some other accounts, maybe a savings account or something. But as a student, you can get a student current account. That student bank account essentially allows you to have an interest-free overdraft. So when I first started in my first year of vet school, I went for the biggest one. I didn't care about any sort of freebies thrown in, like a rail card or things. I was like, I just want the cash. So I went with the co-op bank account for students, and I gave them my letter from my university to say, you know, I've been accepted, before I even went to London. So I did that back home in my hometown, and I got accepted, and that initially gave me an overdraft of £1,400. Then that was completely interest free, and I definitely used it in my first semester and also throughout my first year. Following on from that, in my second year, if you were, you know, not going over your overdraft, so you can max out your overdraft, but so long as you didn't go over your overdraft and sort of kept on top of it, they would like give you, if you were a good customer, they'll give you then £1,700 as an overdraft in your second year, then £2,000 in your third year, and then I held on to that £2,000 for the remainder of my time at vet school. Even when I intercalated, so as a student, sometimes if you do medicine or veterinary, you can intercalate, which means you can study a second degree in the UK for the same cost as if you're an undergrad. So it's cheaper, and they just extend your student loan. So instead of having, you know, a standard 5 years at vet school and having 5 years of student loans, maintenance grant, maintenance loans, I had the additional year, and then that way you graduate with 2 degrees. So I had like a bachelor's of science in biological sciences, and then I also had my vet degree by the end of it. So they don't treat you as a postgrad because you're taking the extra year in the middle of your vet degree. That's a handy little benefit. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. And even when you graduate, they give you 12 months with your student bank account where it's completely interest free. So that enables you the chance to get a job, get yourself on your feet, sort of get yourself out of debt without incurring any additional charges, which is really good.
Okay. So you graduate from the university with having some of these financial, accesses, and you're able to access them. It gives you a bit of leverage as a fresh graduate from the uni. So now you are into a professional career and you are working as a full-time. How are you able to manage your income, your finances, the inflows, your salary? How are you able to do it in order to make sure that financially you are stable, or you are more or less like an independent person?
Yes, good question. So one thing about vet school when I was back at university is that I got my loan every three times a year, so every semester. So you had 3 huge semesters, so you'd get it in like sort of September, October time. Then you won't see any income again until about January, and then you won't see any income again until about April. And that had to like stabilize you for like 12 months. So quite quickly, I cottoned on to the difficulty of it, of managing it and not overspending. So to ensure stability, you have to insure yourself ahead of time, so you have to make sure that you're not overspending from the get-go. To ensure stability, you had to make sure that you didn't overspend in the very beginning. So I managed that personally by overpaying my bills. So for example, when I was a student, I'd get my student loan in October. I won't see any money again until January. And I would count how much rent and bills do I need to pay in October, November, and December and January. So I'd even cover January. So that's 4 months. I'd pay 4 months up front. And then whatever I had left over, I knew was my groceries, was my student supplies, my books, whatever. That's what I had to live off of. Or if I needed new clothes, if I had to, if I needed some new shoes, like things like that. So that's how I managed it at school, at university. Then I kind of took that forward into my professional life. And as a professional, like you said, it is a bit different. Now, you get paid pretty much monthly. Most professionals get paid monthly at the end of the month. But then how do you handle your bills? Because you know your bills are this and that, and you know you earn about this much. But when do you pay them? How do you schedule them? I contact my bills, like my companies, like that I have my gas, my electric, my water, all that stuff. And I always schedule it for the same time every month. So if I get paid, even if I get paid as late as the 30th of the month, like the last day of the month, I make sure that all my bills go out on the 1st of the following month. So I would get paid, and then very soon after, within sort of 3-4 days, maybe even just the very next day, all my bills go straight out. What you do is direct debits on the 1st of every month to then take your salary and pay those companies straight away. So at the beginning of the month, you are covered. You've covered your rent, you've covered your mortgage, you've covered your council tax, you've covered your electric, you've covered your Wi-Fi, whatever it is. And if you don't think there's possibility to change the date of the month, no problem. You can actually create yourself a separate account, either a money pot on Monzo or whatever it is that you find useful, and you just automatically do that direct debit and then schedule the company to take it out of that account rather than your main account. So whatever your main account is that's taking in the whole paycheck, make sure you are filtering out that bill money ASAP, either direct to the company or into a separate account. And that separate account could then be your bills account, especially if you're with a partner and you might want a joint account. That would make life a hell of a lot easier, because instantly, by the time you've got paid and the beginning of, your bills month, within less than a week, you already have paid everything that's essential to you that you need to get through that month. And then whatever's left over, okay, that's my petrol, that's my groceries, that's my, to buy those pair of shoes or whatever you might need. And instantly you have that stability for that month. Now, the question is if you've already overspent before you've got paid. If you've overspent before you got paid, you're already in debt.
You're already in
So
debt, yes.
that's a different kettle of fish, which we'll
And it
move
happens
on
to a
to in
lot
a
of
bit.
people. They overspend before they even receive their salary. So
Yes.
always it's like they are just on the negative side of the salary.
Yeah, and then I think at some stage you just have to make a sacrifice. Like sometimes it's unavoidable. You need those groceries, you need that petrol. You can't help it. Those are essentials. But you
Yeah.
might not need those pair of shoes that quickly. You can delay those pair of shoes. There's things that you can delay, and it's just about prioritizing and almost getting it all on a blank canvas, be it a spreadsheet, be it a piece of paper, whatever it is that works for you. Get it all on somewhere that you can visually lay it out and be like, okay, what's my income? What's in my bank account right now? What have I got, to play with? And start understanding what is costing you. So, for example, my mortgage and bills, if it's costing me more than 60% of my monthly income, it's probably detrimental to me. I'm probably stuck and I'm not able to save, because if it's over 60% of what I earn monthly,
Yeah.
it's hard to say find somewhere cheaper to live, because in the UK there's not really many options.
Yeah.
But it means that you're realistic and you know what's what. Maybe it might encourage you to change jobs, one that might pay you a bit better. So it might give you that courage to sort of pursue a new job opportunity. But yeah, that is a big problem if you overspend before you even start the month.
But in all of these, you realize that budgeting is very, more or less crucial to all of these. Are there special tools or special techniques that you use in your budgeting scheme?
Very good question. I definitely have a spreadsheet. So
Okay.
I definitely keep a spreadsheet, but that's only me personally. Like other people might use other things. There's other apps called, I think there's one that's a budget app that's free called Emma, and there's another one called Snoop. People actually use that on their phone, so it's really quick and accessible, and it's actually laid out way nicer than actual spreadsheet, and it kind of shows you in like visual. It has like infographics, like little images that show you quite easily how you're doing that month, and if you're having a bad month. It also scales it forward, which is interesting, which I can't do with my spreadsheet. It scales forward to see if you're overspending too much and how it might impact next month and things like that. So there are definitely budgeting tools out there. Largely I go off of the podcast Diary of a CEO. He had a financial advisor, because I'm not qualified, but he had a qualified financial advisor to advise on budgeting. So when you get paid at the end of the month, you should be sort of factoring in that your fixed costs are costing you no more than 50 to 60%. So your fixed costs is like your Wi-Fi every month, your direct debit to your gas company every month, your mortgage or your rent every month, and your electricity and your council tax. Like, that what that's going to be at the beginning of the year, and you can sort of trace that forward. Then after that, they recommend, so if you're spending 50 to 60% on your fixed costs, ideally 50%, but if not 60, which is really realistic in today's world. Who knows? It depends on the country you live in and how expensive rent is, and the city you live in. Like bigger cities usually more expensive. But then after you've done your fixed costs, you then have what they say 5 to 10% that you automatically put into a savings pot. So if you can afford to put 5% of your monthly salary into a savings pot, it's not too much. That's just there as your rainy day accessible fund. That helps you budget for those essential emergencies. Then on top of that, they recommend doing 5 to 10% a month to an investment fund, something that's really going to give you a decent sort of build up of interest. And then that way you get more out of it than what you put in. Because at the moment, savings accounts don't really offer much, and you probably need to access that cash, which means you don't really get the benefits of the savings account if you're accessing it all the time. then that leaves you with, we got to 80% now, haven't we? So that
Yeah.
leaves you with about 20%. But depending on how well you've managed your fixed costs and how well you've driven that down by like,
Yeah.
you know, saving money on cars or like, you know, phone bill or whatever, if you're able to cut costs there, you might have 35% at the end of the month. And that's for you to have fun with. That's for you to, you know, do your grocery shopping, get whatever you want, go to the cinema, go to the restaurants, have a date night, that kind of thing. So this financial advisor on Diary of CEO recommends 30, maximum sort of 35% a month is what you should be thinking about for food, for fun, for going out, that kind of thing. But your fixed costs is, yeah, more your utility bills, your accommodation costs, that's 50 to 60%. And then, yeah, savings, a minimum 5 to 10% a month, and then investing 5 to 10% a month. If you can manage that, then slowly over time, exponentially, you'll build that kind of stability and wealth. And that's how you should really budget.
Okay. So you need to set up emergency funds. You need to be able to make sure that you are saving a substantial amount of the income that you are having from your salary after more or less you spend the fixed, what you term as a fixed amount, i.e. your bills and all those that you cannot do without it. And then at the end of the day, it's a must that you need to stick to them. What are your thoughts with regards to savings and investing?
Good question.
How should we balance the two, especially in the early days of our career? How have you done it?
I think in the early days of the career, definitely don't invest too much. Like, I would stick to the 5% rule. If you get a monthly paycheck and you know, okay, for the rest of the year, you know, my annual salary is £30,000. Each month only invest 5%, like keep that out to a minimum, because you don't yet have the savings to really sort of fall back on. So once you invest into an investment fund, ideally you are not to touch it. It's a bit like a pension. You just want it to build and build and build. And you want that to build over the next 20, 30 years so that you can retire with a nice, healthy retirement plan. Now, investment funds are only useful if you don't touch them. So you really have to leave them be and let them build on their own interest. And yeah, when you're early and you're starting out in your career and you're coming out of university, you don't have that kind of cash. I would say, firstly, clear your overdrafts and make sure that you're back to ground zero. So you're breaking back down to zero. You're no longer in the negative. You've come out of university. You've worked hard. You've been, you know, knuckling down for your first 6 months, trying to get back on your feet, and you've got rent, you've got bills, but you're not overspending. So try and get back to zero as soon as you can. Once you're no longer in that overdraft, that's great, because once you hit that 12-month mark, you won't get hit with any interest fees or any charges from not clearing your overdraft. So make sure that's cleared first. Then you can hit ground zero. Then you start budgeting properly, and then you take your monthly income, you work out what is 5% of what I earn every month. And that's, in the UK, that's after tax, because we pay our income tax before we receive our salary. You have to remember, your salary isn't £30,000 whole. You get taxed first.
Yes.
A lot of tax, and then you finally get your money. So actually, what you have left over, you have to think of what your net income is. So what am I getting net income per month after my taxes when they finally put it in my bank account? Work out 5% of that, invest that. Then what you're left over with, I would say, save the 10%. Try and aim high, save that 10%. Then that's 15%. If your fixed costs are quite high and that's taken up 60% of your income, then that's 75% of your income gone. That leaves you only 25% to buy your groceries and to go out with your friends and have a nice time, go on the trip at the weekend to go to somebody's christening or whatever it is, you know, things like that. So I would say as a new professional, try and save hard as 10% every month, and then
Okay.
invest little, like 5%, until you've got a decent amount of emergency fund, because they say it's really good to try and save up 3 months worth of your fixed costs. So 3 to 6 months ideally. So if you know, okay, my fixed costs, yeah, it's about half my monthly salary, or it's about 60% of my monthly salary, you want to save 3 times that or 6 times that as your emergency rainy day fund. That's just quick, accessible cash. So things like if your car breaks down, you're covered. If you're sick, you're covered. If you're sick, I would advise including in your fixed cost income protection, because income protection can really cover you in case of an emergency. So say you got into a car accident and you can no longer work, or something terrible happened and you were really sick for quite a long period of time, you weren't physically able to work, income protection has your back, and then that way you can like be paid your salary even when you're unable to work, because you've paid this protection policy. It's effectively like insurance for yourself, so that if you are sick or unable to work, you have your mortgage or your rent covered and you're safe. So yeah, there's income protection to think about within your fixed costs. But yeah, there's 10% savings up until the point where you are then sort of turning over sort of 3 months bulk savings or 6 months bulk savings. Then you can sort of maybe put it down to 5% that you're saving each month if you've managed to secure that little nest egg, just to keep it topped up and just to deal with natural unexpected bills, like a car breaking down, or tires for your car or whatever. That really helps. And in that time, once you've hit that nest egg, you can then increase your investment. So you can go from 5% of investing every month to 10% or even 15%, depending on how flexible you feel.
Okay. Are there specific financial institutions or investing companies that you yourself use and you think that more or less, not that you are recommending, but at least some of them which are available that you use, and then you think that yes, these are some good kind of, they have good percentages or investment rates that, you know, every fresh graduate or anybody who has started an early career can resort to?
Yeah, good question. I can't say that I can recommend particular companies or
Yes.
products because I am so clueless myself, and
Yes.
also I'm probably not allowed to. I don't know if there's any rules against that for competition reasons.
That's why I just
But
said
I can
you
tell
can.
you
Yeah.
what I've got. So basically, at the moment, I keep accessible cash in what's called the Money Box account. Now, if you go onto Money Box, even if you don't put any money into your money box, I do like the roundups. So it does these random deductions from my bank account where with my day-to-day spending, say the other day I spent something, I think it was £4.06. It rounded up 94 pence to make it a whole pound, and that 94 pence went into my money box. And I do a weekly roundup. So every week I get little bits dripping out of my bank account where based on my day-to-day spending, it's been rounding up and rounding up. And that way I'm saving money without really noticing it, because it's such small amounts each week. It's like it's not a big deal. So that's really handy. On that Moneybox app, they also have lots of recommendations. They have a guide to pensions. They have a guide to investing. Now, that's really good to do investment funds and have a fund and stock share account. That's really interesting. They probably have a bit more realistic advice than what I give. And then they also have the lifetime ISA, which is really important to touch on later. That's what I sort of have as my day-to-day savings. In terms of investing, I have an account with Hargreaves Lansdown. So I have, I think it's called a fund and share account. And I am currently investing in a fund called Fidelity Global Technology, just because technology is really taking off, and it always kind of
Yes,
will
yes,
for our generation,
yes.
with the artificial intelligence and all sorts. But basically, Fidelity Global Technology is just the name of the fund. There's
Mhm.
like hundreds of businesses that that fund invests in, and I'm one of the people that's in the investment fund. So I've got a small stake in maybe 100
Yes,
businesses, but it's
you're.
so minute, it's basically not much at all.
Mhm.
But the good news is in less than 1 year, I think, before we came on to the podcast, did I say it was 9 months? Within 9 months, I've saved
Yeah.
an additional 15.31%. So whatever I've put in, I've made extra money, 15.31%.
Yes.
And that's just from having it sat there investing in businesses. So that is a hell of a lot better than what the current savings accounts are offering. You're lucky to get 4 or 5% on a savings account. And even
Okay.
then, you can't withdraw it, otherwise you'll lose that 4 or 5%.
Yes.
But this, in theory, is less than 12 months. So you normally make 4 or 5% over 12 months, or maybe over 24 months. But this is making triple that in only 9 months. So in 75% of the time, it's doing triple. So without, just without going into it too deeply, it's just a hell of a lot more fruitful than a savings account. And if I keep investing that, hopefully the investment fund will grow. But even if some businesses fail, other businesses that are doing really well and performing well will counterbalance the losses.
Yes.
So that's the idea. So some days I do lose like £1 or £2, but then other days I gain, £7. So it really depends. So that's Hargreaves Lansdowne. And then I also have one other account, a very small account with Vanguard, with the SP 500.
Okay.
So I only opened that up in February. So we're only 5 months down the line, and I believe I've earned 8% on that.
Okay.
That's sitting at 8% now. So it steadily grows as you start investing. And then what I tend to do with my investment accounts, so when I make 15% of what I've invested, I
Mm-hmm.
do an auto reinvestment. So not only am I adding to it, with 5-10% every month, I'm putting extra cash in, but also the
Yes.
money I make on that cash, I'm reinvesting in it.
Reinvesting in it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the interest is reinvesting and making my share account bigger and I guess stronger as well. So it's then just accumulating until later in the future when I'm ready to do something with it or cash it in, or that kind of thing.
Okay. Is there a specific time limit where you want to say maybe I'm saving for the next 5 years, I'm saving for the next 10 years? Is there a year cap on it, or you can save up to when you think that yes, this is the time I want to just take
You can
away all the
literally
the investment?
Yeah, you can literally just keep investing for as long as you want. I could invest until the day I die and never
Okay.
withdraw it. But I don't want to. I want to take it out when I'm older and when I want to
Yes.
sort of stop working, so that I've actually like productively put away some money for me to live off of when I'm unable to work.
Okay.
Some people decide to keep their sort of stocks and shares in there, and they just kind of live off of the dividends. So that's when you stop auto reinvesting,
Mm-hmm.
and that, say you're making 15% off of your account every month, that 15% gets paid to you, and that acts as like passive income,
Yes.
um, rather than auto reinvesting. Because if your investment is big enough by that point, you might not need to just keep auto reinvesting. You can actually live off of that 15% a month. So yeah, the dividends of having those shares could also be beneficial as passive income.
Okay. Okay. Um, with respect to protecting our income, what is income protection and how does it work?
So I have income protection with PG Mutual. I didn't really shop around. I just kind of, someone else recommended them. They were also a
Okay.
vet. And I think I gave them I used their referral code and they got a discount or something, or they got like a reward.
Yeah.
So I went with PG Mutual. I pay about £8 a month, and that essentially ensures me that if I break my back and I'm in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, I can't be a vet anymore, but I would get the same salary as if I was a vet, paid out to me monthly.
Wow.
So it's a really clever way of providing that peace of mind so that you probably can then be more confident in saving and investing. If you're worried about not being able to work and like worst case scenario, something bad happens, but you've put all your money into investment fund and you're not sure whether to withdraw it or keep it in there for later, this enables you to keep it in there for later because the income protection will help you in the here and now. So I pay that every month. At the moment, I get nothing back because I'm healthy and working. But God forbid, something bad was to happen, then actually I'm looked after by having income protection.
Okay, so you have to more or less like save for a specific number of years, or you can say, okay, I've saved for or I've contributed for this number of years, then I cannot continue anymore. Give me back my money. Is that possible, or how does it? Like, I just want to know.
So
Yes. Okay.
it's a bit like a car insurance. When you pay in, you pay in, and if you want to stop paying it, that's fine, but you won't get your money back. So you have to just like go with it, kind of thing. So it's a bit like car insurance. You don't ask the car insurance company after driving for 1 year, oh, can I have my car insurance money back? You are like, it's gone. So if you haven't needed to claim, you haven't needed to claim. So you run the risk of losing that £8 a month. But actually, for me, it just decreases my stress massively. And I rather just have it. Just because, if one day you want to have children, God forbid you're in a car accident, like, yes, you're there with your children, but you're not able to provide for them. This provides you that income every month so that you can still, provide for your kids and things.
Great. Which still regards to the income protection. So, for instance, if I've paid or I've contributed for all these years whilst I was working and I did not have any incident that will make me go and then claim some of these monies, and then I go to pension, do I still, or can I still, take the benefit?
Don't think so. I think once you reach retirement age and you choose to actively retire, so to be honest, in the UK, I think the state pension is quite bad. So I think you have to work until you're like 68 or 69. So it's quite old. And by that point, some people don't make it to 69 and they don't ever see their state pension. But it's similarly like if you get to 69 and now you're claiming your state pension, I don't think income protection is going to cover you. I think it depends on when you choose to retire and how long you choose to work for. It's ensuring you and your income, I think, whilst you're working. But don't quote me on that because I do need to look at my policy. I can't even remember the terms and conditions. I have not really thought about it.
Okay. With regards to more or less investing, when can anybody or can I start investing with a limited budget? How can I start investing with a limited budget? For instance,
do you want to try and use an example here? Shall we try and pretend like we have some income going and we've got some fixed costs and things?
So for instance, maybe at the end of the month, I'm taking like £1,000 home.
Okay, you've got £1,000 after tax, so that's for you.
That is my net salary. I'm taking home.
So you should only then invest £50 max.
Okay, I'll need to invest like £50.
Yeah,
maximum.
And also your fixed cost shouldn't be more than £600 a month.
Okay.
So that might give you an idea of what to aim for and not to go for too swanky of an apartment.
Okay. So some of these stuff that we talk about, we know that basically what we all do is, apart from having financial stability, we also aim to have most of these properties, real estate, going into mortgages and stuff. And how do you acquire a mortgage as a professional in a case where you are working, you are earning salary monthly, and how do you acquire a mortgage? And then
Good question. This is probably circling right back to when you graduate. So when you graduate and you start earning like a monthly income that's quite consistent, I sort of said, you need to focus on clearing your overdraft. And once you've done that, like work hard for 6 months, clear your overdraft, then you're at ground zero. You're on £0, 0 pence kind of thing. At the
yes.
you're no longer in the negative.
Mhm.
I sort of said then you should invest 5% a month. Actually, if you are able to invest 5% a month, your first thing to invest in would be the lifetime ISA. So the lifetime ISA gives you 25% interest from the government towards your first property, but it's capped at £4,000 of what you put in a year. So say you wanted to put £5,000 into your lifetime ISA, you'll only get 25% on the £4,000 you put in. So if you have a spare £1,000 or X amount of money, and if you have excess of £4,000 a year to save, you then should really put that in an investment fund or something else, like a saving account, like a 5% ISA or something that's going to help, towards your deposit, because deposits can be quite expensive. So the easiest way to get on the property ladder for me was the government equity loan. So that was 20% towards my first property, but the property had to be a new build. So I then had 20% of the equity loan. That left me having to find sort of 13% of the property value as a deposit.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people say, oh, you only need 5%, you only need 5%. Actually, sometimes it's not like that. It's based on your income. And my income was quite low at the time. So I think I was on 33,000, or was it 31,000 at the time. So actually getting that deposit, that they asked for more than 5%. So yeah, the 20% equity loan covered 20% of the property. Then I had to cover 13% of the property as in the form of a deposit, and then the rest became my mortgage. So, and then you have to think about other things like sometimes there's properties that have stamp duty, which is another tax. Then you have also solicitor fees and things like that. So there are extra charges as well along the way. But the best way to save up for a deposit is the lifetime ISA, because 25% interest rate is phenomenal. And if you manage to save £4,000 between April of the first year you start to April the next year, that's 12 months. And that's how they calculate your 25%. So they do it from April to April every year, because that's the tax year. And then if you manage to put in £4,000, they'll give you 25% interest, topping your £4,000 up by a further £1,000. So the government is gifting you £1,000 to add on to your £4,000. Yeah, effectively, yes. And with the lifetime ISA, if you suddenly won the lottery and you were like, okay, I don't need a mortgage, I can buy this house without a mortgage. Woohoo! Brilliant. Keep that lifetime ISA going as an investment, because between the ages of 18 and 39, you're entitled to that lifetime ISA and that 25%. So that age range is great for using the lifetime ISA. Keep using it well until you're 39, 40, when they no longer accept you, and keep it for retirement. So lifetime ISA can be used for people who want to get onto the property ladder, so to buy their first property, or to use for retirement. So if you came into like a whole load of cash, or you won the lottery or something, got really lucky, really rich, you don't need a mortgage then, and you could go mortgage free, not touch your lifetime ISA, and keep that for when you retire.
Okay, so the lifetime ISA can also be used as more or less like a pension or a retirement package.
It can be, yeah, if you don't use it for a house.
You don't use it in the time frame.
Exactly.
Okay. So what's the difference between cash ISA and then lifetime ISA?
So a cash ISA is usually, if you're lucky, sort of 4%, 5% interest. Yeah. It's very low. You can maybe do 2 or 3 withdrawals within the year. depends on the terms and conditions of your cash ISA. It's just like a savings account, really. A cash ISA, you're not investing in any stocks, so it's not a stocks and shares ISA. It is literally just cash that you have sat in an ISA, and you build up a small bit of interest. Whereas a stocks and shares ISA is probably a bit more risky. You can lose money, you can gain money, but you might gain more than in a cash ISA. It's hard to know until you go into it. But lifetime ISA is very predictable. It's 25% every year. So long as you are able to max out and hit that £4,000, that's the ideal way to save. And yeah, I've been encouraging my partner to do that. He just opened his last year and he hit that goal of £4,000 to get that 1,000 top up, which is ideal. So he's now sitting at £5,000 in that lifetime ISA. And now that we've gone past April, there's no stress or pressure just yet. If he doesn't have the cash to put into the lifetime ISA, you can wait a bit until later in the year when things are a bit different. But now he has that goal set for next April, and he can sort of postpone that investment up until then if he chooses to.
Yeah. Okay. So you can use lifetime ISA, or you can go into cash ISA, which is just like your
More
normal
accessible.
investment. Yeah, investment account that you open for yourself, and for that one you can more or less access it number of times within the year. As
Yes.
Yes.
And the interest usually comes from the bank as opposed to the government. So the lifetime ISA, you can't touch it. If you do touch it, you won't get the 25% top up from the government. But the interest rate comes from the government. So the government guarantee that 25% for you.
Okay. Are you one of those who think that everyone needs a credit card?
Yes. I think that's the only reason why I got approved for my mortgage, basically. So quick answer, yes.
Okay.
It's very useful, and it creates flexibility.
Okay. So you think that there are a lot of benefits attached to having a credit card? Because I know there are people who do not want, because the mere fact of it being called a credit card, they are not so interested because they don't want any kind of credit in their life, so they don't want to deal with any kind of credit.
I think credit cards can be dangerous if they're not tracked and monitored properly. So I think it's so important to stay on top of it, and not to be scared of it. Like, as soon as you start burying your head in the sand and not opening the letters from your credit card company, is a dangerous place to be. You end up incurring a lot of fees, a lot of charges, and a lot of interest. So they make money off of you. Credit cards shouldn't be seen as like scary. You can benefit from having a credit card because it proves to like mortgage companies and the banks, that you have a good credit score, because getting a credit card will boost your credit score a lot. I went from probably good to excellent by just getting a credit card and using it for my grocery shopping or whatever it is, like anything that you just do day to day as no biggie. Aldi, Lidl, Tesco, Sainsbury's, every single main high street supermarket where you just get your fruit and veg and whatever else, they all accept credit cards, even American Express. So I took out an American Express credit card first, and that also gave me some cash rewards, so that was beneficial. So I got some discounts and some cash rewards. So by being their customer, they rewarded me for the amount I spent on my card. So the more I used my American Express, the more points I gained, and then the cash came back.
Okay. Do we or can I just use only one credit card, or I can opt for more credit cards depending on?
Opt for more, and you start with one and then prove that you're a good customer and have a good credit score. Once you have one and you've been paying your bill consistently, definitely go for a second one. I would recommend 2 at least. I have 2, and yeah, it makes life quite flexible in many ways.
Okay. Have you ever been in debt, and how did you manage debt? How did you come out of it?
Good question. So the first initial debt was my student overdraft, particularly in my final year where I did a lot of clinics and rotations, and they cut the student loan. So my student loan, that used to be like a full student loan each year, I lost 1/3 of it, which is significant. So I went from like 100% to like, sort of 65% or something of my student loan. It was a huge drop. And then on top of that, because of vet school being so demanding, you had to be in the hospitals and you had like duties to do, and you weren't getting paid for them. So I lost the ability to pick up my shifts. I used to work for the university and do some part-time work. I wasn't able to do that because I was stuck in the hospital. So I built up a bit of a problem with my overdraft. I kind of tried to stay on top of it and kept just about enough of my overdraft to pay my deposit on my first rental accommodation when I was starting my first job. So that meant that I just had to kind of wait out until my first paycheck. That was quite a painful 2 months, because usually you don't get your full paycheck straight away. You have to wait usually about 6 weeks in, or maybe longer, 6 to 8 weeks. People are usually waiting for their first full paycheck. And when I finally got that just basically kept me within my overdraft, but stopped me from going over the edge. And it also helped pay my credit card. So that was my first sort of experience of debt. And I just sort of, over those 6 months, I was in lockdown. I wasn't really going out that much. I just chipped away at it. And I think those 6 months are really good if you can afford to not go out too much, just try and do cheap and cheerful activities, then just work on that overdraft. But the other time I got into debt quite seriously was when I was actually trying to buy this house. So I didn't quite have the full deposit. I had some, but not all of it. And because it was a new build, there was a lot of delays on building the house. And I was very lucky. I got the mortgage in principle online. And then when it came to actually like getting my mortgage and getting that all set up, and giving the lawyers my money, you don't actually have to part with the deposit for quite some time. So long as you say you have the deposit, and tell your mortgage broker what your income is, they don't really need to check it until the time of when you actually have to make those payments and exchange things. So the lawyers will contact you and say, look, now's the time to pay. But actually it was quite long, like quite a way down the track. So sorry. I'm getting all stumbly with my words. I'll get some water. But so actually, by the time you get your mortgage from your mortgage advisor and have that saved to one side, and you're actually then having to pay your deposit, you have quite a few months with a new build. By the time the house gets built, there's delays in getting the materials. It gets knocked back and knocked back. By the time the lawyers turn around and say, okay, we're ready for you to pay now, you've bought quite a lot of time. So even though I didn't have the full deposit, I knew that if I was careful and if I was clever, I could risk getting myself into a bit of debt and actually save my salary. So what I did was, I think it was a total of 6 months, I lived off of credit cards. So I would get paid my salary every month. My direct debits for my rent and bills would go out, and what was left over I didn't touch. And then I just lived off of credit cards for about 6 months. So I did incur some interest fees, I did incur some charges. And then by the time those 6 months was up and I had to pay my deposit, what I'd saved aside from my salary, that all went off towards the lawyers for purchasing the property. But that meant once I moved into this property, yes, I had my monthly salary to again pay my mortgage, and my mortgage was much cheaper than my rent, thank God. So I saved about £300 a month there automatically. I then had to start working hard on these credit cards. So I ended up taking out 2 credit cards, because my first credit card, I was such a good customer with American Express, they increased my credit limit as time goes on. So they start rewarding you. So I started off with like £2,000 on the credit card. Then they let me have up to £6,000. Now, I never needed that until I was buying this property. And then I maxed out that £6,000. I was living off of it.
Yeah.
So then my salary that was left to one side untouched, went to the lawyers, I bought this property, moved in, then I had to get a second credit card to try and keep afloat. And then I started being quite clever and trying to sacrifice a few things, cut back on costs, pay off my American Express credit card, and also leaning on the second credit card. Yeah, it made a huge difference.
Great. It's very important because most people, the reason why I asked the question about the usage of the credit card is that most people think that, once it's credit, it's not good. I'll not go for it. It will affect my credit score and a whole lot of, debates about it. But clearly, anyone who is building a bit of a financial kind of thing, you see that they all resort to, or they make good use of these credit cards. And it's at the end of the day comes back to help them a lot. Yes.
Yeah, and it's about knowing what you're dealing with as well. Like, you're absolutely right. Like, nobody wants to be in debt, but actually there's something about having a credit card that really boosts your credit score, and then you can then be rewarded with a bigger credit card limit because you constantly pay off your bills. Credit card companies just want to see that you are a good customer, so you are able to borrow and give back. If you can do that with a credit card, then the mortgage brokers are going to think, oh great, they're great at borrowing money and giving it back. So if you're able to do that with a credit card, you can then do that with a mortgage, and so on and so forth. So it's showing that you can get yourself into debt and get yourself back out of it, and doing this kind of dance. And then that way, eventually, you'll gain more flexibility. So with American Express, they start to reward me with bigger and bigger limits, which was great because at the time I didn't need those big limits. But when I was working towards the mortgage deposit, my God, I needed it. So when it counted and I needed it, it was so useful to have that flexibility, because I didn't have to touch my salary and I could just coast along for a few months. Now, albeit I wouldn't do that if I had children, but as someone by themselves, that is like trying to push quite hard in such a short space of time. And the reason why I rushed it was because of COVID. So after coronavirus, it was expected that the interest rates were going to go up for mortgages, and they really did. So by the time I got my mortgage, I froze it. I fixed my interest rate at a very cheap rate of 1.49%, whereas a lot of people are facing interest rates of like 9%, which is crazy. And if you're buying a big thing like a house, that 9%, huge amount of money it clocks up. So you have to try and aim for the lowest interest rate possible when it comes to a mortgage. And then I got that interest rate at 1.49%, and I fixed it for 5 years. And again, because my house wasn't built that quickly, I was able to extend my mortgage rate and keep it. So you were able to freeze it effectively, so that I didn't have to go up to the market rate and jump up. I was able to freeze it back in November 2021, way before I got the keys to the house in July 2022. So it was really handy. And yeah, that's the only reason why I put myself in that quite difficult situation with credit cards in that final push to get the house, because I knew economically it was more sensible overall because of the way interest rates were going. And lo and behold, my friends who are trying to buy houses now, I feel for them, because it's just really awful the way coronavirus has really affected the economy, and the banks have just kicked those interest rates really high. And it's just a waste of our money if we're going for mortgages with such high interest rates.
Well, so if let's look at this hypothetical scenario. So for instance, if maybe I have just graduated from the university and started my first job or my new job, what should be more or less like my financial priorities in the first year?
Okay, trying to clear your overdraft before you start getting charged after 12 months. So within your first 12 months, aim to clear your overdraft, and aim to open up a lifetime ISA.
Okay.
That's your two number one things. Also, open up a credit card, just because that fact of, putting your grocery shopping on it and then clearing it every month is really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Can you share some of your personal experiences with regards to managing finances as a vet surgeon, and then some of the mistakes you've learned along the way, or the
Mm.
successes that you want to highlight, how you've been able to shape yourself up to this point?
Yeah, I think it's easy to lose track of things. Like when you're busy in a new job and you're learning loads of new stuff and you're just working crazy hours, lots of overtime, it's easy to actually like lose track of the calendar. And the calendar month is so key when it comes to finance.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to make sure that you contact those companies that you are charging you bills, make sure that it's at a convenient time of the month for you, and that everything goes out at the same time. That includes your savings. So I think the mistakes I probably made is I didn't put that 5% aside into investing in my lifetime ISA at the beginning of every month when I should have, and things like that. And also, I didn't set up reminders soon enough, and then I would accidentally forget to pay my credit card. So then I would end up accidentally getting an interest fee or a
Yes.
charge. I think that's probably the most crucial thing, is not checking when the company is going to do their sort of invoice statement to you. I now know categorically my American Express card will always bill me on the 27th of the month. So if I actually pay my bill in full on the 26th of the month, then actually the invoice is going to say £0, 0 pence, and I'm not going to have
Yeah.
any charges, no interest rates, and I just look fantastic on the credit score front. So it boosts my credit score like no end. Now, I didn't know that in the beginning, and it's taken time. And I think the key to my mistakes was not setting up reminders. Now, in this day and age, that's in my mobile phone. It used to be a written diary. I used to use a written diary every day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
write in every month what I need to think about, so that every week I saw it coming up. At the beginning of the week, I'd see it. But now, actually, I don't even use a written diary that much, because I'm on the move so much and I'm
Yeah.
driving so much. I'm not really sat at a desk that much. I use my like iPhone calendar, and I set it so that the 26th of every month, the same thing crops up, and you just set it as a repeat, and it just constantly reminds you. And you can set it to remind you the day before and the day of, so that okay, today's the deadline, I've got to pay today. But also set it up the day before, so you're like, okay, gosh, tomorrow I really should pay that. And then the next morning you get the reminder, oh yeah, I really
Yeah.
should pay that today. It just jogs your memory before the deadline, which is the following day. So
Yeah.
you've given yourself like at least 48 hours notice. That would be my best trick, I think, that I wish I knew from the beginning.
Nice, 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 nice. So if you could advise as myself, my listeners, my viewers, what what are some of the maybe key tips that you give to us to achieve financial success? Because for me, I have come to realize that managing finances is the most difficult thing that
It
most
is.
people are struggling to overcome, because we get the money, we take away the fixed stuffs that we need to, whatever it is, we need to take them out, but then we are left with that maybe 30%, 40%, and we don't even know how to manage it as well. By the time we realize, we are into the next receiving month,
Yeah.
and more or less we are living hand to mouth, like the literally we
Yes.
say we are living
Easily
hand to
done.
mouth. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
It's really frustrating 'cause it's so easy to make the mistakes, and you're like, how have I let this, go out of control? And it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
really easily done. So I think the main thing is setting yourself a budget. So you mentioned like you have like how much left a month? Is it 30% of your monthly income?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, when you've got your main bank account, filter out the bills and the savings, but then also filter out yourself a budget. So
Yeah.
you have like two separate sort of debit cards, and on one of them is your 30%. And you know that I've put 30% here, or maybe you've put 25% here and you've left 5% because you knew you were going to overspend. And then you know that once that 25% is spent, you have to
Yeah.
start being more careful. And then that leaves you with 5% emergency for food, basically, because you've already paid your bills, you've already paid your savings or your
Yes. Yeah.
investments,
Mm.
and now you've got 25% to just, not really worry and track that much, because you don't have time to track it every day,
Yeah.
but you have secretly left yourself 5% back where you started just because you knew you'd overspend. So I think that works really well. My friend does that. She purposely gives herself I think £700 every month that she can do whatever she wants with. But by that point, she's already paid her bills, she's already invested or saved some of her money.
Yeah.
She's also, taking into account that she has to spend money on her credit card or something, or her car bill or something like that. So that £700 is separate from all that. That's just for day-to-day groceries, petrol, whatever else. So that she doesn't really have to think about it or track it that much.
Okay. That's great. That's great. It's very important that I think all of us should have that kind of mindset that whatever it is, we will be financially disciplined in order to have financial stability, because we work each and every time, we save, we invest, but still people think that these are not the things that can make us millionaires. Do you think so? Do you think all these stuff that we've talked about or we've spoken about are things that will not make us be millionaires, but they are things that probably, if we want to be millionaires or billionaires in the future, there are things that we need to get into? Do you think there are certain businesses or there are certain kind of things that we need to engage apart from investing, saving, setting up an emergency fund, doing all this kind of stuff?
But by all means, like through investment funds, you could become millionaires. It's just how aggressive the investment fund might be. So actually, it depends on the risk you want to take. There's some that are way more aggressive, or you can choose to have a safer investment fund, but you can choose to invest in it more aggressively. That could, in fact, make you a millionaire, in theory, over 20 years, but you won't be a millionaire tomorrow. You'll be a millionaire in 20 years time, that kind of thing. So it's having that kind of perspective. I don't really think there's anything that's going to get you rich that quick, unless you're just really damn lucky and win the lottery or something, or if you're very innovative and you create something that really takes off in the business world. But even then, it's not a guarantee. There's always risks.
Okay. What is the ideal kind of retirement or pension are you aiming for, or do you aspire to have?
Good question. I don't know if there is really a perfect number that I can really say. I think you have to really talk to your own pension company. So each person who's employed by an employer gets enrolled within a pension, or if you're self-employed, you can set up a private self-employment pension. And it's important to talk to them to see what you're putting in. If you keep putting in the same every month, what you're going to actually have by the end of it, so they can actually forecast it for you. Personally, I feel like I've got the best pension out there at the moment. So the Animal Plant Health Agency and the civil service, like the Food Standards Agency and things like that. If you get a civil service job, the civil service pension is the best one, because the employer puts in 27% and then you put in your contribution as well. So I can't express how good that pension is. Like, when I was in private practice working for a private business, the employer only put in 3 or 4% into my pension, and then I put in what I wanted to contribute every month. I wanted to opt in. By the end of 2.5 years, I probably had about £6,000 in my pension. I made that in the civil service pension within 3 months. So, or 4 months. So it's chalk and cheese, really. Like, the speed at which it grows in that pension is phenomenal. So it means that I'm able to retire younger. And it's a question of how much money do I want to have for retirement versus how young I want to be. So if you wait a long time, say I work till I was 70 and I'm a civil servant up until then, I'll have a massive pension. That's great. But how much time will I have to enjoy it? How much energy will I have to travel and experience life and do other things? It might be nicer to take partial retirement and maybe work part-time, or maybe just retire really young. Like the earliest I can retire is 55 with that pension, which is really attractive to me, because actually at 55 you're still young. Some people go into business at 55. Like you still can work on new projects or be creative or do some volunteering, or spend your time differently. You can go traveling, and that kind of appeals to me because I'll have the energy and the zest still to do those kind of things. But having a set figure, obviously if I retire at 55, I'm going to have far less pension than if I retire at 70. So you're having to sort of have that trade-off, and I have to constantly log in to my pension portal to see, what am I putting in now? Is it enough? If I do this for the next 20 years, where will I be? Because by that point I'll be 49. So I'll be about 6 years away from retirement if I wanted to retire, because thankfully I'll be able to retire at 55. But, am I being aggressive enough with the pension? And that's how long is a piece of string, you know what I mean? And it depends on how much you need to live. So I think knowing what country you're in and what your sort of fixed costs are looking like, and the cost of oil is more expensive, or the cost of gas is more expensive than another country, you know what I mean? It can really, really vary on the individual, to know how much they can live off of comfortably. But that doesn't include the state pension, which you'll be entitled to anyway. So in the UK, you'll have your state pension that comes later. That will be coming back to you. But it's not that much, the state pension. It's not enough to rely on it. So you definitely need an actual active pension plan.
Wow. You've really educated us, giving us practical insight into how we can manage our personal finances and the things we need to do, the do's and don'ts of the game. Though they are your personal kind of experiences, but I think that most of them generally applies to all of us as professionals working day in, day out. And they might be common grounds for all of us in terms of how we can manage our finances. So I think it's very good for us to also pay particular attention to the things that you said on this podcast. And myself and my listeners, my audience and my viewers, we are very grateful for your time here, for the things that you said to us and everything. So is veterinary medicine really a paying job? Is it really something that more or less you encourage somebody who wants to move into that area of profession, come and study to become a vet?
I don't know. Personally, I wouldn't necessarily tell my children to go into it, only if they're really, really passionate. I think it's not a job that's going to get you rich being a vet. So you have to really care about it, and realize, what are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing your day-to-day work enjoyment? Do you enjoy the variety? If you do enjoy variety and you enjoy animals and helping people and with their animals, then it's the perfect job for you. But if you're more driven by money, then I wouldn't say veterinary. I wouldn't say go be a vet. No. And probably that's where I'm probably a bit biased. If it was my child, like, I probably would say don't choose being a vet, because actually it's exciting, it's tiring, but it's not paid that great. So I'd probably say no, there's better options out there. But by all means, if my child turned around to me and said, I blooming love animals and I really want to help people, and I really find this gives me that get up and go, and that kind of, it gets you out of bed in the morning and you actually look forward to your day ahead, then definitely it's the job for you.
Wow. Thank you for coming on board, and thank you also for sharing your experience with us. And to my listeners, my audience, my viewers, thank you for tuning in today's episode of the King Obed podcast. And a huge, huge, huge thank you to Jordon for sharing your valuable insights on personal finances and financial education. So we should all be on the lookout to have a financial mindset that will help us to be financially stable and take control of our finances. So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in and thank you for coming on board. I'm really, really grateful for this. Thank
You're
you.
ever so
Finally,
welcome.
yeah, yes. Finally, we've had this, you know, conversation, and I think that people will love it because everything that affects us now is just about, you know, finance, money. So
And it's a
it is
stressful
something.
thing. Like we can't avoid
Yes.
it. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. So I think it's let me leave you so that you go and continue with the things you are doing. I'm really, 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 really grateful. Thank you so much for coming on board.
No problem.
And
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure,
thank you.
as
Okay.
always.
Right. You're welcome. All right. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Obed.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.